Hello my dear students, I am WS Omega and I am an English teacher. Dear students, today we will be learning about the sequence of tense and conditional tense. First, what do you mean by sequence? A sequence is a particular order in which related things follow each other. For example, I give you the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. This is a sequence. They are numbers. But I give you 1B, 1, B, 4, 7, C, etc. This is not a sequence because they are not in order and they are alphabets and numbers which are not related. Now, look at the examples. I think that she will pass the examination. She came here when I went to the school. Here, in these two sentences, I think and she came are the principal clause, and she will pass the examination. And the second example, I went to the school, are the subordinate clauses. These subordinate clauses are connected to the principal clauses with subordinate conjunctions that and when. So, when there is a subordinate clause, there is a relation of the tense of the verbs in the principal clause and subordinate clause. Principal clause की tense का subordinate clause की tense का मरी लेने. The tense of the subordinate clause is influenced by the tense of the principal clause. This process is generally referred to as the sequence of tense. Let us look at the rules. Rule number 1. Normally, a present tense in the principal clause does not affect the tense in the subordinate clause. It may be followed by different tense forms. Look at the examples. She says that Sir Liklai taught them mathematics. Pyari says that she has been teaching English. Here, the principal clause she says is in the present tense and the subordinate clause Sir Liklai taught them mathematics is in past tense. The second example that I gave you, Pyari says the principal clause is in present tense and she has been teaching English is present perfect tense, which is also present tense. And so, if the principal clause is in present tense, then it does not affect the tense in the subordinate clause. Karigumba principal clause se present tense da leiramba taraba, subordinate clause ki tense se karisu sokte. The subordinate clause can either be in present tense or past tense if the principal clause is in present tense. Rule number 2. Now, look at the examples. We have, she said that she had been teaching English. She said. The principal clause is in past tense and the subordinate clause she had been teaching is also in past tense. Number 2, the second example, Shimre came in the bus when it was raining. The principal clause Shimre came in the bus is in past tense. The subordinate clause it was raining is also in past tense. And so, from these examples, we see that when the tense in the principal clause is in past tense, then it is generally followed by a past tense. If the principal clause is in past tense, then the subordinate clause will also be followed by a past tense. Now, let us look at rule number 3. First, the examples. She said that the earth is round. Principal clause, she said, is in past tense. Subordinate clause, the earth is round, is in present tense. Example number 2, we knew that ice is cold. Principal clause, we knew is in past tense. Subordinate clause, ice is cold, is in present tense. Now, the subordinate clauses in the examples that I have given, the earth is round and ice is cold are universal truth or a habitual fact. And so, when the subordinate clause is treated as a universal truth or a habitual fact, the past form of the principal clause does not affect the subordinate clause. Now, a quick recap of all the rules. Rule number 1, if the principal clause is in present tense, then the tense of the subordinate clause will not be affected. Rule number 2, if the principal clause is in past tense, then the tense of the subordinate clause will also be in past tense. Rule number 3, when the subordinate clause is treated as a universal truth or habitual fact, then the tense form of the subordinate clause will not be affected by the tense of the principal clause.
Now, in continuation of this class, let us also learn about the conditional tense, as both the topics we discussed today are interrelated.
Conditional means expressing the idea that one thing depends on another thing. So, conditional tenses are used to speculate about what could happen, what might have happened, and what we wish would happen. In English, most sentences using the conditional contain the word if. There are 5 ways of constructing conditional sentences in English. In all cases, these sentences are made up of an if clause and a main clause. In many negative conditional sentences, there is an equivalent sentence construction using unless instead of if. Now, let us start with the types of conditional tense. In conditional tenses, there will be the if clause and the main clause, as I have already mentioned before, the if clause and the main clause. Number 1, look at the examples first, the if clause and the main clause. If this thing happens, that thing happens. If you heat ice, it melts. If it rains, you get wet. So, here the if clause is if plus simple present. The main clause is also simple present. So, when the if clause is simple present and the main clause is also simple present, then we call it zero conditional. Sometimes in zero conditional sentences, the word if can be replaced by the word when without changing the meaning. For example, instead of if you heat ice, it melts, you can also say when you heat ice, it melts. Next, number 2, let's again look at the examples first, the if clause and the main clause. If this thing happens, that thing will happen. If you study hard, you will pass. If you don't hurry, you will miss the train. So, the if clause is if plus simple present. The main clause is will plus base. So, this is simple future. So, when the if clause is simple present and the main clause simple future, then it is called type 1 conditional. Next, number 3, let us again look at the examples first, the if clause and the main clause. If this thing happened, that thing would happen. But here it is like, I'm not sure this thing will happen or that thing would be happening. If it rained, you would get wet. If I spoke Japanese, I would be working in Japan. Here we see that the if clauses are if plus simple past and the main clause, the result is present conditional. Would plus get is present conditional and would plus be plus working is present continuous conditional. So, when the if clause is simple past and the main clause present conditional or present continuous conditional, it is called type 2 conditional. The type 2 conditional refers to an unlikely or hypothetical conditional and its probable result. Hypothetical means a supposition, an assumption, a thesis. These sentences are not based on the actual situation. In type 2 conditional sentences, the time is now or any time and the situation is hypothetical. It is just an assumption. It is not real. Generally, for first person singular, I, we use the be verb was for past tense, but it is also correct and very common to say if I were instead of if I was. For example, if I were taller, I would play basketball, or if I were rich, I would buy this car. In type 2 conditional tenses, you can also use modals in the main clause instead of would to express the degree of certainty, permission, or a recommendation about the outcome. For example, if we had more money, we might buy a bigger house. If you gave me tickets, I would go to the concert. Now, number 4, look at the examples, the if clause and the main clause. If this thing had happened, that thing would have happened, but neither of those things really happened, or that thing would have been happening. Example, if you had studied harder, you would have passed the exam. If I had tried harder, I would have been working in Europe. So here in the examples, we see that the if clauses are past perfect. The first main clause is perfect conditional, and the second one is perfect continuous conditional. And so this is called type 3 conditional. The type 3 conditional is used to refer to a time that is in the past and a situation that is contrary to reality. The facts they are based on are the opposite of what is expressed. The type 3 conditional is used to refer to an unreal past condition and its probable past result. In type 3 conditional sentences, the if clause uses the past perfect and the main clause uses the perfect conditional or perfect continuous conditional. Number 5. Let us look here. The if clause and the main clause. If this thing had happened, that thing would happen, but this thing didn't happen, so that thing is not happening. Look at example. If I had worked harder at school, I would have a better job now. If you weren't afraid of spiders, you would have picked it up and put it outside. Here we see that the first if clause is past perfect and the second if clause is past simple. And the first main clause is present conditional and the second main clause is perfect conditional. And this type is called mixed type conditional. The mixed type conditional is used to refer to a time that is in the past and a situation that is ongoing into the present. So the example that I gave you, if I had worked harder, I would have a better job now, is the opposite of my situation now. Aina express tawiduga aigi oiriba situation ziga opposite oinaba. So the facts they are based on are the opposite of what is expressed. The mixed type conditional is used to refer to an unreal past condition and its probable result in the present. In mixed type conditional sentences, the if clause uses the past perfect or simple past and the main clause uses present conditional or perfect conditional. Now, in all conditional sentences, the order of the if clause is not fixed. You may have to rearrange the pronouns and adjust punctuation when you change the order of the clauses, but the meaning is identical. For example, if it rains, you will get wet. You can also say, you will get wet if it rains. The order can be exchanged. You can put the main clause first and then the if clause later. Now, let us look at this table. Conditional sentence type, usage, if clause verb tense, and main clause verb tense. Number 1, zero conditional. Usage, general truths. If clause verb tense is simple present and main clause verb tense is also simple present. Number 2, type 1 conditional. Usage, a possible conditional and its probable result. The if clause verb tense is simple present and the main clause verb tense is simple future. Number 3, type 2 conditional, a hypothetical condition and its probable result. The if clause verb tense is simple past and the main clause verb tense is present conditional or present continuous conditional. Number 4, type 3 conditional, and the usage an unreal past condition and its probable result in the past. The if clause verb tense is past perfect and the main clause verb tense is perfect conditional. Number 5, mixed type conditional, usage an unreal past condition and its probable result in the present. The if clause verb tense is past perfect or simple past and the main clause verb tense is present conditional or perfect conditional. So students, we have already learned the conditional tense. Please go through it again and again and learn it well. See you in the next class.